There are over 40 vehicles in BeamNG, all built for different purposes, from vans to eco boxes to sports cars and even supercars. But no matter what you drive, you rely on one thing. That of course being on how well it takes a corner. Handling is one of the most important characteristics on a car. It can make or break its entire image, which is why I've taken it upon myself to drive every single car in BeamNG, so you don't end up like this. To do this, we've come here, a humble handling circuit in New Zealand, filled with twists and turns that every petrol head would love to put their tyres on. But first, we have to establish a few rules. All cars used in this experiment will be mid-range models, not exactly sporty, not exactly economical. This therefore makes it more realistic and fair. Secondly, we'll have two scoring systems, actual handling and a fun factor. A 0 is given to vehicles of which I'd rather walk than operate. A 10 would be given to a vehicle I'd drive any day with a smile on my face. And, most importantly, this video is opinionated. Feel free to debate my decisions in the comments. Now, enough rules, let's get stuck in. First up is the humble Piccolina. Produced for a staggering 16 years, it's possibly the most iconic symbol of Italy. With its bubble-like shape, 1.1 litre flat 4 engine producing a measly 34 brake horsepower, and its awfully tiny stature, I found the Piccolina to have pretty poor weight distribution, feeling as if the front was about to lift off the ground at any second, and it constantly suffering from oversteer. This is due to the engine being placed at the rear, as well as its semi-trailing arm suspension. This, paired with its dreadful gearing, made the driving experience quite a challenge. However, its lightness made up for it, and made it quite an interesting experience. 4.5 out of 10. Next, we have quite the opposition to a Piccolina, the battle-hardened Autobello Stambecco. Being the second and last vehicle in the current Autobello lineup, it is quite the drastic change in vehicle. From its large steel wheels to its 2.8 litre turbo diesel inline 6, forcing out a quite disappointing 101 brake horsepower. On the track it doesn't get any better. As you could probably distinguish just by looking at it, it obviously suffers with its weight, being very top heavy and having quite noticeable understeer. Autobello isn't clearly great with their gearboxes either, because the Stambeccos is quite abhorrent too. Incredibly long gearing with really short red lines. But the turning circle is rather impressive, which does help on the corners. A solid 2 out of 10. The Bruckell Bastion, the last bastion of American muscle. With presumably other brands like Gavril strictly producing EVs and crossovers, Bruckell comes in with its new, gigantic, beastly V8 sports saloon, which is not the one we'll be testing today. Yeah. The base V6 is an interesting character, with most being sent to taxi or fleet duty. Despite this, the V6 still manages to push out over 281 horsepower, which is nothing to scoff at in the terms of V6 Americana. In terms of handling, it's in the middle of the ballpark. The very frequent understeer mixed in with the annoyingly intrusive traction control makes the driving experience really irritating. This means I can't rate it higher than a 5. Rolling in straight from the 80s, we have the Bruckell LeGran. Equipped with the incredibly bare-bones inline 4, thankfully, due to the rules, will be set with the slightly better V6. The SV6 is fitted with a 3.3 litre V6 outputting a bearable 134 brake horsepower sent straight to the two front wheels. As you can imagine, the driving experience is quite dreadful. You'll notice occasional understeer whilst the god-awful 4-speed Autobox struggles. As it's from the 80s, it's clearly on something, as it can never decide what gear it's in. It also has incredibly bare-bones suspension, independence up front, and a torsion beam in the rear. Also, no matter what you do to it, you'll never look cool in it. 3 out of 10. Moving on to a slightly better vehicle, the Gavril Moonhawk. This absolute land yacht comes in at a whopping 17 feet and weighs just under 2 tons. Under the bonnet is a colossal deadweight 378 CUI V8, whatever CUI means. As it's American and a V8 from the 70s, it can manage 182 brake horsepower and a shocking 5 miles to the gallon. Yeah, the future was bright in the 70s. until, well, it wasn't. In terms of handling, it's as good as you'd expect. Terrible. It takes the turn with the grace of a car accident, rolls from side to side like a boat, and has incredibly vague steering. It's like having to set the coordinates of a turn to actually turn the car. It's a proper effort. Though, the oversteer is manageable and is in fact advantageous if you do know what you're doing. The Bruckell Nine. I'm glad we made progress from this. The 30s wasn't great to America, and especially the world, which explains this. The flathead V8 has an output of 78 insignificant horsepower. It's all bad, really. Why we ever decided that one leaf spring was all we needed for a comfortable driving experience is beyond me. To be honest, I'm surprised cars still existed after this era. People saw this and decided, we should develop this more. It's been very good so far. And to those people, I thank you for your service. Oh, right, the car. Obviously, the suspension is very weak and leans heavily from left to right. It oversteers religiously and has very limited power. Obviously. 1.5 out of 10. Over 20 years later, and the overall driving experience has been improved as many begin to drive after the second small disagreement. To take advantage of all these new customers, Gavril created a new subsidiary named Burnside to advertise to all the families that wanted to seem slightly better than their next door neighbour. With all this new technology, we now have overhead cams and more efficient drive systems. A 4.5 litre V8 with rear-wheel drive and a 3-speed auto column shifter. However, on the track it suffers from noticeable body roll and a sloppy gearbox. I mean, it is a 3-speed from the 50s, so... Finally, we have a well-handled car. The Cherrier Vivace was produced from 2020 until 2024. It came with a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder smacking out a mean 161 brake horsepower paired with a 6-speed manual. Despite being an economy car, it has a very strong flair of sport in it, being very well planted, having quick, reliable gearing, and accelerating very quickly. Unfortunately, understeer is noticeable. Despite this, a very fun, reliable car. A well-earned 6 out of 10. As the Tograc is practically the same car but on stilts and wearing rugged plastic, it'll be under the same level as the Vivace. There are a few slight differences, however. The Tograc seems to suffer slightly more with understeer than its shorter sibling, and obviously has more body roll through the corners. Overall, it's not shockingly different, but there are a few tweaks between them. Therefore, the Tograc manages a 5.5 out of 10. Now, we have the ultimate driver's car. A rear-wheel drive V8 Italian sports car from the golden era of sports and supercars. I'm of course referring to the 1980s, and more specifically the Civetta Bolide. Produced for 7 years by the well-respected Civetta brand, it was plaster all over bedroom walls for years. And you can see why. With its sleek yet sharp design slicing through the air, it's hard to find flaws on this thing. Well, until you get behind the wheel. Now, before you get upset, let me preface this. This is not a car you can just get in and go. This car is something that you have to adjust yourself to over time, making it rather hard to review. It also helps if you're an expert driver, which I am less than. Moving on to the actual car, it severely suffers from frequent oversteer as it has all of its weight placed at the back, which does mean the front wheels can lift on certain corners, specifically on hills. The sheer amount of horsepower going through the rear wheels and the lack of security on the front does make it feel near impossible to drive if you are inexperienced. However, it is a good challenge once you get good at it, and trust me, when you have it, this thing flies into the nearest wall. In short, fun, powerful, and will kill you when it feels like it. 7 out of 10. After years of perfecting their craft, 2020 saw the release of Civetta's greatest car yet, the 5-litre, naturally aspirated V10 Scintilla. A limited run model only being produced for 2 years, and only a few lucky enough to be on Civetta's good list could access it. It is also one of, if not BeamNG's most complex vehicle. A unique body structure, design, and safety systems is only part of this vehicle's 2-year conception into the game. A truly special car. It handles very well, surprising, I know, being well planted, well geared, and having overall smart handling if you're not ragging it. Unfortunately, it's not perfect. Like the Bolide, all the weight has been forced into the rear, the engine, drive shafts, gearbox, etc., with the only weight at the front being the radiator. The oversteer mixed in with the awkward traction control, making an attempt to save the car, makes the experience a bit awkward. Still, it's rather impressive and still gets an 8 out of 10. Here's a car with the most foresight I've ever seen. Yes, just because someone says this car is ugly doesn't mean you have to listen to them. I quite like the 800 series, a variety of body styles, configurations, and especially engines, coming from factory with an inline 4, inline 6, and V8. So why hate it? The model I drove was the 844 250, coming with a turbocharged 2-litre inline 4, making 250 brake horsepower, making it not a riot but more of an intense protest. This so far has been the best handled car here. Well planted, great spacing between gearing, and firm, sporty but reliable suspension. Best of all, the traction control is incredibly subtle, only saving you when you absolutely need it. Again, nothing is perfect. The 800 series does come with snap oversteer, but this car is nothing short of absolutely magnificent. Back at it again with a banger, the I-Series is a true unfiltered driving experience. No traction control or anything, just 4 wheels, a straight 6, and 130 brake horsepower. This car loves to slide and it won't send you into a tree either. It holds the slide very well and you can recover very easily. Therefore, this car makes you look like a very skilled driver, no matter your experience. All of this is thanks to its stock limited slip differential, which limits the movement inside the differential, allowing for a controllable slide. The I-Series gets a 9. Yet again, ETK knocks it out of the park with a great machine. The ETK K-Series features an inline 6 powering 2 rear wheels which work in harmony with the 360 brake horsepower produced from the refined engine. It also features a perfect 50-50 weight distribution, making it well planted to the ground and having non-existent over or understeer. This is what a sports car should be: powerful, responsive, and damn near gorgeous. Just like the 800 series, the traction control is incredibly subtle, never interfering with you or the road. A true work of art. 9 out of 10. The FPU Wydra is abysmal dog shit. This is possibly one of the most awful experiences on wheels I've ever had. You see, the Wydra features tank-like turning, which means yes, it will do a 360 without moving an inch forward. However, it seems incapable of turning at speed. Not only this, but the dreadful whine of the puny inline 3 with the added CVT transmission makes the audible experience not much greater. Whereas most cars at this point would have crossed the line at an average of 2 minutes or so, the Wydra dragged itself across the line at an agonising 4.5 minutes. However, on the upside, its hometown is Poland, a pretty country that made such marvellous vehicles like the FSO Polonez and the Fiat 126P. So, I guess it's not all bad. Still, it's so irredeemably bad, not even the quality of its origin can save it. Sorry, Wydra. Also, it doubles as a boat. And boats, as we know, are inferior method of travel. I know, I'm sorry. It's true. This video was opinionated, but that is just a fact. On the flip side, we have something more fun. The Gavril Barstow is quite the rebel of a bygone era. Flying in the face of basic human decency and nearly all morals, the Barstow is quite the mental machine. Featuring a 291 CUI fleet power V8 outputting 184 brake horsepower, it really packs a punch despite the conventionally small engine. For Americans anyway. Driven by young leather jacket wearers and people who prefer not to pay for their vehicles, it wasn't a rare sight to see one of these rag past you at 70 and then 10 minutes later see it wrapped around a tree. This of course being caused by the lack of experience, but also the sheer amount of oversteer. This car wants to kill you. It wants to be destroyed, so for most, it's a no-go, but others see it as an acquired taste, like black licorice, say. Metaphors aside, it's an absolute riot to be behind the wheels of one of these things. Insane power with barely a hint of control. Absolute dumb fun. The suspension setup is quite smart too, helping you manage to keep it on all four wheels. On the minor side, understeer can be present at low speeds and oversteer at the top of the rev range. The Bluebuck is one of the more forgotten vehicles in BeamNG, and realistically, there's many reasons why. It doesn't have many outstanding features, it doesn't stand out in a crowd of cars, there's not much variation, and overall, it's quite boring. It handles as well as you'd expect. Poorly. With its massive weight and size, it leans from left to right on every corner and falls forward and back whenever stopping or accelerating. It's very much like a tank of water, sloshing in various directions depending on the movement. It's incredibly heavy, sloppy, and sluggish. However, you can hold a drift in it. Now, the car, or rather truck, that started it all. First modelled in 2012, the Gavril D-Series is the poster child of BeamNG. Featuring in BeamNG's first tech demo vehicle, having the most configurations out of all other vehicles, and being one of the most recognisable cars in BeamNG, is the truck. It also featured in one of my first videos to blow up. Twice. Overall, the handling is quite basic as you'd imagine, with small hints of oversteer in the corners and body roll. However, the gearbox is surprisingly good, having good travel between gears. An average rating for an average vehicle. A 5. Throughout the 90s and even leaning in today, the Gavril Marshal was a cheap, powerful and comfortable saloon, typically used for police work, taxi work, workhorses, rental cars, first cars, last cars, limos, getaway cars, derby cars, and even drifting, believe it or not. A jack of all trades, if you will. With its nearly indestructible 4.5 litre overhead cam V8 making 195 brake horsepower from factory, meaning that no matter what you throw it in, it will come back with a dent or at most a weird ticking noise. With its basic suspension setup, more akin to a couch than a car, you'd be surprised to hear this thing is quite fun to drive. I'm not exactly sure what it is for this thing, but it loves to slide. Yep, the car that's been sitting on the retired fire chief's drive is actually quite the missile. This would be quite the issue in regular driving, but if you've just been given the keys, you can have at it like there's no tomorrow. This is mainly one of the reasons you can't rent them anymore. Most rental companies were at a net loss for over 10 years because of tyre replacements. 6.5 out of 10. And that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon for part 2. Cheers. See you next time.